Today, I am excited to welcome Olivia Hitchens to the podcast, Principal Partner of Artemidi Law and a leading authority in franchise and retail law across Australia. Olivia is widely recognised for her expertise in commercial retail and franchise law and plays a pivotal role as the exclusive legal advisor to the Australian Retailers Association, which represents over 8,000 businesses nationwide. She is also chairs the ARA's Leasing and Franchising Committee, helping to shape the legal and operational frameworks used by some of our country's most prominent brands, including David Jones, Cotton On Group, Q, and Fantastic Furniture. Olivia and her team at Artemidi Law have been our strategic legal partners for coming up 4 years now. She works closely with us and many of our clients, providing practical, commercially minded legal advice that aligns with the realities of growing a franchise or expanding a brand. In today's episode, we're diving into a timely and important topic, the intersection of AI and franchise law. We will be exploring how AI is transforming the role of franchise lawyers and the emerging challenges that come with it, the legal risks business owners face when using AI tools to draft contracts or manuals without proper legal oversight, the implications of AI-generated content on intellectual property rights in franchising, regulatory and ethical concerns related to the growing reliance on AI in legal practice, Olivia's advice for franchisors who are considering AI tools for drafting their own legal documentation, plus just some practical tips for the safe and responsible use of AI in your business. So this is a very important conversation for anyone navigating legal compliance, document creation or strategic planning in a franchise context. And I'm so pleased to have Olivia here to help unpack it. Olivia, welcome.
Thank you so much for that. Wow, what an introduction. And I'm really privileged to be joining you on your podcast. I mean, Tereza Murray Franchising, I've just watched it grow from strength to strength, and the work that you do is awesome in this space. And I think leaning into this topic rather than running away from and hiding from it is so important.
So important.
And, I said to you before we jumped on, it would be really obvious and people would expect you and I to say, oh, AI, run away, don't use it, it's horrific, so that we from a self-interest perspective, keep doing what we're doing. But that certainly won't be my message today. And I think unpacking safe use of AI, smart use of AI is the goal.
Absolutely.
And put some guardrails around the use of AI to make sure that you don't inadvertently create a problem for yourself.
100%. And obviously we're the same as you. We're seeing more and more of it all the time coming through. And sometimes it's used really well. Sometimes it's just a disaster waiting to happen. So it'd be great to get the legal perspective on everything as well. So, let's start with how AI is transforming the role of franchise lawyers and obviously the challenges that come with that as well.
Yeah, it's a good place to start. So I think AI will, and it's sort of starting to impact the work that we do, in that people will come to us and say, oh, look, I don't think I need your help with this because I've actually got ChatGPT to do that. And depending on what that is, depends on whether that's a really good thing or a really bad thing. So as we all know, franchising is really regulated, overly regulated, in fact, so that there's so many fines and penalties and compliance risks. So there's really smart ways of using AI to save on legal bills. And I'll give an example of a basic policy within your workplace for social media use. AI will draft you a brilliant social media policy. It'll write you a fantastic expenses policy. Those internal documents that you need with your team, simplified processes, marketing content. AI can do a great job of those repetitive, simplified processes. From a franchising perspective, the instruction sheet that you might brief your lawyer with to draft a franchise agreement, AI's got a role to play in assisting you to populate that in a basic way or to reformat that. But AI has no role in drafting your franchise agreement, negotiating special conditions, or handling the disclosure process. Reason being is the risk of getting something wrong is just too high and the penalties are too high. And if you stuff up the disclosure process, if your documents don't comply with the code, a franchisee can walk away. it can unwind the agreement. So I always say to people, I love AI. I use it day in and day out. It'll help me be faster with the work that I do for my clients. I should be able to charge less, right? If I'm using AI safely to help me compile a franchise agreement, right? And to format, to compile. If I can save money doing that, the cost will come down to the client. But it's not an opportunity for really critical parts of franchising to be outsourced to AI. That's how I see it. I'm not sure if you sort of feel the same way, but yeah, I think definitely use it behind the scenes. I will definitely use it behind the scenes, but critical legal documents in franchising still need oversight from a lawyer, I think.
100%. And yeah, we obviously we 100% agree, and we're using it more in our business. I think the key thing, and this is talking more about those internal documents like your social media policy and that sort of thing, is you can't rely solely on ChatGPT to put that policy together for you. You've got to give it the right information to enable it to produce something that is, relevant and accurate and not just generic. That is really not going to be helpful at all. So, there's still some work involved, obviously, as you're saying, and with those sort of non-legal internal documents as well, making sure that the information that you feed in is going to produce good results. So
I think you're right. A, the prompts have to be right. B, the information available to that particular whatever it's ChatGPT or whatnot, has to be current and accurate. And then it has to be customized to your business. So I still think there's a role for really basic generic documents to come out of these platforms, but you cannot just pump them out without checking them. And I'll give an example. ChatGPT is time locked. So it doesn't have the latest laws in it at the moment. I think that the data it's pulling is old. And I had a client say, look, I don't need you to do my privacy policy for me. I got ChatGPT to write me a privacy policy. But the privacy policy was out of date, the legislation, and it was wrong. The stuff around use of cookies and all this kind of stuff, it wasn't relevant. And the client shipped their products overseas to Europe, which meant that they needed to be compliant with European privacy laws, the GDPR. ChatGPT doesn't know that. So that privacy policy is completely useless. In the same way, if you asked it to draft you a franchise agreement, it will give you something that looks like a franchise agreement, might have the right sort of headings, but it will have absolutely nothing to do with your business. And if you spend hours and hours and hours prompting it, it'll start to sound more like your business, but it may be missing fundamental concepts. In fact, it almost certainly will have huge holes in it.
Yeah, absolutely. You just touched on one of the potential implications for not getting, those legal structures right, as in allowing a franchisee to just walk away. But what are some of the other legal risks that business owners face using AI tools to draft things like franchise agreements and manuals and disclosure documents?
So the obvious one is that the document won't do what it's meant to do and it won't be enforceable. It'll miss a critical concept. So, for example, it may not have really good default provisions. It may not have, in a franchise concept, it may not have sufficient rights for the franchisor to trigger a power of attorney or to re-enter a premises. It may be missing those things that we need for when times are bad. Often it is missing those things, or they're not relevant. So what will happen then is you just won't be able to enforce your legal position correctly.
Yeah.
In franchising space, if the disclosure is not perfect, if the agreement contains illegal provisions that don't comply with the code, the franchisee will have a really easy door to walk away from a non-compliance perspective. So there's those contractual risks, as the code compliance risks of penalties if you inadvertently include something in a document that's prohibited. But then beyond that, there are a whole bunch of other risks around IP. So it will use whatever information it wants to use, and you won't know where that comes from. So if it's dishing you up an operations manual, it's taken that operations manual from someone.
Yeah.
Okay. And it can be infringing someone's copyright and you won't know. So I'll give an example. You may ask it to produce you an ops manual, which is like the greatest red flag of all time and should never happen. But let's say someone does. It's probably taken the ops manual from a large franchisor where that's ended up online by mistake, like a McDonald's or something like that. And it will be replicating that document almost identically, or for the most part. You're infringing copyright. When you're using AI to create an image or to draft a slogan or write an article, again, you don't know whether that's going to infringe someone's IP, and it is quite hard to source check. It's almost impossible from an image perspective to source check. I had a thing where a client used AI to help them make a fabric print and a design for a unique product. That fabric was absolutely lifted from a Gucci print.
Wow.
And, that you just don't know what you don't know. That's obvious. But also ChatGPT and these online AI tools will have biases. So they may be discriminatory. They may have misleading content. So the risk is that you pump out something that is offensive. It's inaccurate because it has these malfunctions. So that you end up with a misleading, deceptive conduct problem. Even in an internal perspective, if you're using it to make these complicated, important policies and you're not checking it, could have all sorts of biases in there. It might say you can't go to the toilet. You can only go to the toilet once a day. I don't know what it might put in. And if you're not checking it, you're going to end up in trouble. So just be smart about it. It has such an awesome role to play to automate repetitive processes in your business. That's where AI is absolutely critical.
Yeah.
For me, opening files, sending out client agreements, following up on invoicing, AI every day. But I'm not going to use it to draft a contract.
Yeah. And you sort of touched on some of the regulatory, but what about the ethical concerns related to growing reliance on AI and legal practice in general? What are you sort of seeing out there?
It's interesting. So the law is very old school. We don't like technological change. And the courts have come out and said, do not use AI to draft your affidavits and court materials. And you must, as a solicitor, make a commitment that you have not used AI to draft affidavits and critical documents. So they're very much in the dark ages about that. And I think that is a mistake because AI does have a role to play in helping you do a foundational task really well, and structures arguments quite nicely. But what has to happen is solicitors then have to come over the top and fact check. It will put the wrong cases in. It will cite legislation that does not exist. And there's been instances of this. So there's an ethical bit there, which is you're putting something forward, whether you're a lawyer, a franchising advisor, or a doctor, or whatever you're doing, or a content creator, you're putting something forward as your own work, and you're saying that this is something that you've created. And if it isn't, then you're lying and you're not ethically correct, and you're taking someone else's work, which is the other thing. And from my perspective, if I'm charging clients for something that I've just knocked out of ChatGPT in 20 minutes and charging them 2 hours for it, I've got a problem. And I think over time, as AI gets better, legal prices will go down because everyone will be smarter and they'll say, well, there's some foundational stuff that you no longer need a junior lawyer to do at $500 an hour, whatever their number is. And I know you've used AI to be more efficient, so the price will come down. But I'm seeing some really unethical stuff online around wills, particularly, and shareholders agreements being mass produced using AI. And I think it's unethical because you can't possibly know everything, and you can't possibly be giving quality wills, quality estate planning, proper shareholders agreements with discussion with the parties, gauging reactions to topics. That's not happening. So you're going to get something really vanilla.
Yeah. And so what would the key piece of advice be that you would give for, either new franchisors or existing franchisors using AI tools for drafting any of those documents?
Yeah, I just wouldn't use AI to draft a legally binding document that was mission critical to my business. I would never use AI for a franchise agreement or an ops manual. These are the two mission critical things that govern the value of your business, that stop franchisees leaving, that stop disputes, that go, if you ever want to sell your business, right, and a private equity fund comes in and looks at your franchise group and says, well, hang on a minute, your franchise agreements are inconsistent with one another. They contain inaccuracies and they're missing key concept. Your valuation is going to plummet. Yeah. But I would absolutely recommend AI for if you've got a lot of franchisees, assessing the expiry dates, helping you look at that data, or your different data of your franchise networks where there's inefficiencies. How can we save money on supply chain? where are franchisees raising the same customer service issues time and time again? Data analytics and repetitive processes. So maybe it's that you send out a notice every week to franchisees with helpful tips and tricks based on feedback you've got from the network that week. AI will do a great job at analyzing that feedback, giving you a draft comms that you can then read and edit and pump out. Like that regular, I'm thinking of a gym programming here, for example, where they're pumping out gym programming to a network, or, newsletters. AI is great for that. But it's got no place in two key documents of your business. And leases are the other thing. It's just for those franchisors that either hold the lease and license the franchisee, or where franchisees are taking their own leases. I've seen people throw a lease into AI for a review, and it'll pick up on some things, but it'll fundamentally omit things like a redevelopment clause, a relocation clause, personal guarantees. It won't raise those as being something alarming, which would be the first thing that we would raise.
Yeah.
And so I just think don't use it for mission critical documents that have value.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a common misconception with us. Like when I'm talking to potential clients, they'll go, "Oh, with the manuals, how do you know what we do? Like, do you just using templates?" And which to me is hilarious, because every single business operates differently. There's no such thing as a standard business model. There's no such thing as a standard franchise structure. And this is what, I have to do that sort of education piece right at the beginning. Is our job is not to tell you how to, be a franchisor. Our job is to help you fundamentally to replicate your business model and operating system, which means that those manuals are going to be 100% tailored. And there'll be lots of things that we will be asking them about how they want franchisees to operate in certain areas. But ultimately, what they decide is, going to be probably, mostly unique to them. So you can't get like you say, ChatGPT to produce an operations manual, because what information is it drawing from? Our first discovery meeting with clients is usually 3 to 4 hours, and it is a deep dive into everything to do with day-to-day operations and compliance for franchisees. It's a big piece of work. That's where we get to understand their business in detail. That's a lot of information to try and put into a ChatGPT prompt. So,
and it won't get it right. And what it does for people is it steers them down the wrong path. So you've probably seen it, and I've probably seen it. Someone says, "Oh, I did my own ops manual using ChatGPT. I just want you to finesse it and play with it." And you're actually better off starting from scratch, because it'll miss concepts, and you won't know that you don't know what's missing. That's the greatest problem with it.
Yeah.
And it'll gloss over things that are really mission critical to you. So, okay, ChatGPT will write you a great introduction, a fantastic conclusion. And maybe when you've written your ops manual with the help of, you've actually written it, Tereza Murray's been involved, it's been a long process, throw it into ChatGPT and tell it to make it simpler. Ask it to give you a summary. Help, if there's, get it to you, be tactical. If you don't understand a section of it, right, ask ChatGPT to explain it, because that's what your franchisees do, right? So they'll use ChatGPT to validate the content, but it cannot describe, to your point, a business it doesn't know. And whatever you put in is all it knows. So I think there's so much to be said from those face-to-face Teams calls, pushing each other, challenging each other.
Yeah.
Oh, you mentioned this, following threads. You won't get it there. And if you can't afford to pay for someone to do it properly, then you should not be franchising. You're not ready. You don't have the cash flow. You're not in that position.
Yeah. Oh, so we see that so often, DIY versions of it, and they are just a catastrophe waiting to happen. They're not fit for purpose. They are not going to protect the franchisor. It's just, unfortunately, it is a very common misconception at the moment that AI can do just about anything. But it's still got a long way to go before it will replace professionals, particularly in such regulated industries as franchising.
I think so. And I mean, I take the gym franchise concept. If you had a problem with members leaving weights all over the gym floor all the time and not packing it, ask ChatGPT to make you a one-page message to members about that, fine. If you wanted some comms to go out to members around use of bathrooms, great, ChatGPT will write that every day of the week. Do not get ChatGPT to write you an exercise liability waiver. It will not reference the correct legislation. It will not. And if you haven't mentioned it, you won't, the waiver will be useless. You may as well not have had one. And I keep giving this example because people think that it knows. It doesn't know. It only knows what it's told and what it can find. And you just got to be super, super careful.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. You probably answered my last question just around practical tips for safe use. And obviously you've given some really great advice in there. So thank you very much for your time. That has been super helpful. And I know our viewers and listeners are going to get a huge amount of value out of that. So I'll pop your details in there as well for anyone who wants to try and avoid some legal catastrophes.
Yeah, happy to help. And I think just one last closing remark is you do need a safe AI use policy in your business, because what will happen is someone will be using it without you knowing. So they're definitely going to use it. Embrace the fact they're using it, but make sure you've got some policies and procedures about safe use, and don't get AI to write its own policy about its own safe use.
Yeah, that's great advice. Thank you so much.